Hey everyone, how the heck are you today on this Friday afternoon here in my region at least? I hope everyone's having a good time. Now I know it's been a while since I've done a video. I have been really busy, mostly just working, a lot of stuff going on at work, and life has just been kind of catching up with me, but also Tears of the Kingdom has just been taking up a lot of my time, so I do apologize for that. I know that there are YouTubers out there that they play the game and they upload every day, but I'm just not that kind of person, at least not right now. There's really no motivation for me to do it on a daily basis, but I also just kind of draw blanks when it comes to like, hey, what do I talk about with my videos, right? But I had an idea, and so I want to get your input on this because I think this is a really wonderful conversation to have, especially right now with the cusp of Tears of the Kingdom, you know, and everything like that. Just, it's a really exciting game. There's so much to explore, so much to do. It's bigger and better than Breath of the Wild ever could be because of the fact is that there's just so much scope to this game. But what I wanted to talk about is that they brought back, a few things. When it comes to Tears of the Kingdom. Gleeox, for example, Breath of the Wild had Lydos. But I wanted to sort of talk about this idea of, hey, and they might have to reinvent it, again, because of the way they're doing the series now, where it's more open world, and you just sort of have access to the abilities from the beginning of the game, and you just use, like, the same 4 abilities or whatever. But I kind of thought of this idea of, hey, let's do another top picks, because we haven't done a top picks in a while, of the top Zelda items that I'd like to see come back in a future game. Now, I assume that this would have to be like a top-down game or a more traditional Zelda game with, traditional dungeons and stuff like that. However, and again, this is because of the way they're changing the format to where you have access to stuff like lightning, thanks to the Sage avatars and stuff like that. And just the way the game is playing, because you have Ultra Hand and stuff that's unlocked from the beginning and stuff. But if we went back to like, hey, you hit like left for bombs, for an example, and you just kind of choose, or you have a wheel that comes up like it does, and you choose these items and you have access to use them all the time, kind of like what you had when you had a Link Between Worlds on the 3DS back in the day, where you had access to all the items from the beginning. What items would you like to see come back? And this is my particular list, and it's in no particular order, so feel free to put your thoughts in the comments down below of what Zelda item you'd like to see come back, especially if it's one that I haven't picked. I'd love to have a discussion upon this, because really I want to see what they do with all the Zelda items, but these are just my personal picks. Now, the number 1 pick, and again, it's not because it's the number 1 item, I just think it's the most interesting one to see how they would use, especially if they continue to use the open world format, the Minish Cap. I think that would just be a cool next step as far as, hey, you've got this Hyrule, right? And you've got the depths down below it, and you got the skies up above it, but now imagine if there are tiny parts of it. Imagine how much more you could find if there's like a little mini dungeon, for an example, down in a crack somewhere, in Lanayru, or up in the sky somewhere, some different part. There would just be so much interesting stuff to do with it. You could find little tiny holes and just go through it and find whole new stuff. I think it could open up so much stuff to be able to shrink down, use the Minish Cap, and discover so much more, especially if there are unique items that you can only use when you're using the Minish Cap. I think that would be a great thing to do, and it could technically kind of be a companion like what you've had before, where you had Mipha and all that stuff, and their spirits are always with you in Breath of the Wild, and now you have the Sage avatars that are always with you, following you around. It could be a companion in that sense also. But I just think that using that particular item to be able to shrink down is going to be really interesting. The next pick on this list is kind of one that they're kind of already letting you be able to do, depending upon if you can build it with the Zonai parts and everything. But specifically, just because I think that it would be interesting to see them create these unique puzzles using it. I want to see them, and I'm sorry I don't remember the name of the item exactly, but it's the little spinning platform that you got in Twilight Princess. That little disc, to me, was a really cool item. It led to a really cool boss fight in the game. And just the way they used it to be able to go back and forth like you're doing this whole surfing thing, was really cool. And I know that you can kind of technically already do that if you got the little rails. You can create a little thing, and I know that you can kind of already technically do it. But let's just expand upon it even more. Why not? I mean, they got some very interesting puzzle designs in here, and I think that if they really put their heads together, they can come up with some very unique uses for that platform. The next that I want to see, just because, again, I think there could be some interesting puzzle mechanics with it. So I guess it's going to depend how they would use it within an open world Zelda game, is the ability to split. Kind of like what they did with the Four Swords, where you could split into 3 other people to solve puzzles. Except for this one, I'm thinking more of like an astral projection kind of thing, to where maybe there are very thin walls, almost like what we can do now with the whole Uprise, the Ascend ability, but going forward, where you can kind of push yourself through certain walls that are real thin, to sort of solve another puzzle, or astral project yourself over to another part to pull a lever that lifts something up. I think there could be some very unique mechanics used for that. That's probably going to be the most unique thing that I can even think of off the top of my head. That would be kind of new, taking an old item and sort of making it do something new or different. But that seems to be the Zelda way, right? Is we don't exactly use the same item in the same way. I mean, look at what they've done with the next item that I want to see, the hook shot. Now, the hook shot is a classic Zelda item. It's been in a lot of games, but they have reinvented it in so many different ways, to where it was just like a hook shot, and then other ones, it was like almost like a rope, or it became a grappling hook in Wind Waker. Which I guess is kind of technically the same thing. But you kind of get my point of how it's sort of like this grapple shot kind of thing, where you can use it to maybe wrap around stuff to swing. Maybe you can use it to make a bridge, especially if you want to continue to use this whole spirit thing that they've been kind of doing with Breath of the Wild, where you're sort of creating stuff and expanding even more in Tears of the Kingdom, where that stuff is then physically built using an Ultra Hand. Could easily have it to where maybe it's a grapple hand, and it grabs stuff to then allow you to build a whole bridge that can affect the area, rather than you just build a small little thing and have to keep fusing stuff together to do it. I know that's kind of the exact same thing as Ultra Hands. That's the reason why it's towards the bottom of the list and not really a part of the list, but just kind of if they could do something new and interesting using a grapple, I think it would be very, very interesting. Up to them, of course. And again, I want to emphasize that there are many, many Zelda items, and probably a lot that I'm forgetting about on this list, that they could do some really cool things with. And I understand they've eliminated this one because of the recent games. You don't really have much of a need for them, but there used to be a big distinction between what an arrow could do and what a boomerang could do, and I would like to see them bring back a boomerang. Now, like I said, it's not really needed, because even if you say, hey, bring back the Wind Gale one and let it give you an uplift, well, I mean, they now have stuff where you can basically just throw a pine cone onto a fire and it creates a draft that sends you up. There's no need to have to do that. And if you continue to do abilities like Rivali's Gale was in the last one, that lifted you up. You don't really need it. But if they continue to go forward with this, and they want to figure out a way to give you some kind of updraft ability, or maybe give you some kind of a unique, air dungeon item, I could recommend the Wind Gale again, or just the boomerang. And I think one of its most unique aspects would just be to do something that a lot of items currently cannot do, and that is to bring back the multi-lock ability. And that was something that cool that the boomerang did. I could instantly see this being the kind of thing that when you're holding the boomerang, instead of an arrow, yeah, you can sort of aim at one thing at a time. But wouldn't it be kind of interesting if you could maybe aim at 3 or 4 enemies at a time and sort of knock them out to where they're kind of dizzy a little bit to give you an opening to go up and attack them? That's one of the main uses I think that the boomerang would come in handy. But that's my list. It's only 5 items, and there's a heck of a lot more that I'm sure if I sat down and I spent a good hour or two going through every single item in the Zelda catalog, I could probably think of an interesting and new and unique and really cool use for it in a future game. But that would kind of take the fun out of this discussion, at least for me. So I'd like to hear what you have to think. What Zelda item do you think should come back? And if you want to go so far, if you want to be so bold, put your suggestions down as how you'd like to see it. I seriously doubt anybody from Nintendo is even watching this video, but I think it's just an interesting discussion to bring up. But I've taken up more than enough of your time. I appreciate you watching me. If you watched before the full length of time, I really do appreciate it. Feel free, of course, to do what every single YouTuber asks you to do, but of course there's no pressure for me to do it. Leave a like. Subscribe if you want, as I do try to make content at least once a week, although occasionally every now and then I do kind of get busy with life and just kind of forgetful. And also just leave a comment like I talked about earlier about what you would like to see, what Zelda item would you like to see come back. But otherwise, even if you don't do any of that, I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Hopefully life continues to just be good if it's good for you, or it gets better if it's not right now. So just stay strong and keep doing your thing. And I'll see you guys next time in the next video with Retro Geek Gaming. Let's go retro.